Hello everybody. This is a video to go with my note about the Calata alla Spagnola in F by Dulce, the one that begins like that. And I'm going to illustrate some of the points I made about the left and the right hand. Starting with the left hand, I mentioned, I'm all turned around today. Starting with the right hand, I mentioned that the choice of thumb or index makes quite a difference to the effect, the rhythmic effect, particularly in a lively dance like this. And Dulce seems to be very careful about the notation, or Petrucci does. And one example I cited was bar 22, also bar 82, where you have a rare example of short-long rhythm. Of course, most of the piece involves, long, short, long, short, long, short. But in bar 22, if I start from bar 20, and so on. So he gives you a thumb on that offbeat, which makes total sense because you get a nice accent in that surprise moment. If we go ahead to bar 82, we can illustrate a similar thing. So going from bar 80, that's played with the fingers. What he's got written is, which is quite a lot easier to accent. So I think that's probably not accidental. Again, it gives a little bit more emphasis to the strong beat, to the surprising offbeat. And then, of course, there are many, many examples of a hemiola rhythm. The first one, I believe, is in bar 29, where you have, if I go from a few bars back, if I go from 27, it's clear that he divides things up into hemiola rhythms, so you have three groups of two over 2 bars. If I do it with a bit of exaggerated emphasis, going from 27, so he then goes back into normal 3 after that. That's a pretty obvious one. Of course, the most obvious hemiola rhythm of all in the piece comes at that wonderful drony section near the end, where you have, just scrolling to that, that's a wonderful example of hemiola. And so it goes on. Those are all rhythms we want to emphasize. It's that wonderful playful contrast between effectively a bar of 3 and 2 bars of 3 groups of 2. So you're going back and forth between 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, and 2, and 3, and 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and so on. It's a perennially used and favored rhythmic contrast. Any others to point out? I made a note about bars 47 and beyond. Let's go to bar 47. Yes. Now here's a really, really interesting example of subtle notation, which doesn't look random to me. If I do bar 46 onwards slowly, thumb, 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 so what you're getting there is in 47 and 48, you have an accent to third beat. And from 49, you have an accent at second beat as well. Thumb. And that's it's consistent enough to appear to be intentional. If I play that at speed from 45, makes a subtle difference, doesn't it? And it's worth giving that a try. It takes a bit of application because it's not always sort of intuitive, but it works very well, I think. So, by the way, just coming back to this section, it's interesting that he seems to specify thumb on the second beat. So, thumb, thumb. I had always previously played it because the octave's rather nice if you have an octave strung 6-chord lute. But he seems to be clear that he wants thumb on those notes. Moving to the left hand, let's go to bars 10, 11. Whoops. Okay. Yes, this is just to illustrate the importance of using the fourth finger on the third fret whenever possible. It's a very good habit to get into. In bar 10, it's absolutely necessary because then you can be getting the third finger ready, like that. If you used the third finger without thinking too much, you'd have a jump, and you'd have quite a time making that go smoothly. That's a really good habit to get into. The piece is full of these. So as a general rule, I would say, just use the fourth finger on the third fret, on the upper strings, certainly the top 2, maybe the top 3 courses. Next point, well, bar 28 is another really good example. If I go from 28, again, if I used a 3, it's obvious, isn't it? You don't want to jump if you don't have to. In an ideal world, we never use the same finger twice in a row, unless, here's an exception, those are sort of moments where sliding is probably the smoothest thing we could do. But as a general rule, if you can do alternate fingers rather than jumping or even that sort of thing, you'll get smoother transitions. Bar 45. Yeah, that's a nice moment. It's one I mentioned in the text. If I go from 46, we have this lovely chordal bit, which I just talked about in relation to the right hand. But in relation to the left hand, that's a very good place to remember your chord shapes. Here's an F major. Just hold everything down. And even here, then you get this rather nice harmony, drony harmony. Sorry, I'm playing the wrong right hand fingerings. Throughout all of that, just keep your F major shape more or less in place. Bar 70. That's a moment that I highlighted as being perhaps the trickiest moment technically. Let's try that slowly. Note the use of lots of fourth finger on the third fret. Don't emulate that twang. That's more like it, isn't it? The best way to get a passage like that sounding clean is to just practice it slowly and very patiently work the speed up, very, very gradually. So don't hesitate to start like that. Notice that the bass note stays down. And then very, very gradually work your way up using the metronome by one click at a time until you get up to a speed you want. It's easy to sort of fluff that passage, but that's a lovely, lovely moment in the piece. Moving on. Yes, I just want to look for a moment at the shift in bar 85. Yeah, the sneaky shift. So if I go from 85, I'm on a 3 in the bass. You see how I went to a 1 there? That is kind of a no-brainer, because if you weren't thinking ahead, you might do... And you notice how I lose the bass note? And if I'm not careful, I get a pull-off noise. I get the wrong harmony. So that's the recommended fingering there. Finally, bar 112. Yeah, 111 into 112. This happens a couple times. So if we look at 111, we're in second position. We have to be, because of 110. Now we're going to go to a 3. So it's just a lightning fast shift down, and take your thumb with you, down 1 fret. So, and I suppose you could, going back to 110, you could instead do land on a 4. I find that slightly more confusing, but that's another option if you like it better. I like that myself. And as I say, you get a couple of instances of that in the piece, at least. The final thing I wanted to mention is ornaments. I mentioned in the text that, although the printed books of the time don't have ornament signs, it doesn't necessarily mean that ornaments wouldn't have been played. What sort of ornaments? Well, again, Capirola can be a clue. He has little trills. He also has little mordants. In this piece, how about that sort of thing? You could even do a backwards one. Just little ornaments like that, I think, are worth putting in. See what else you can come up with. There isn't particularly a right or a wrong answer, but it does appear that ornaments would have been played, at least by some players of the time. So I will sign off there. I hope you find this useful. You know how to find me via the website, so drop me a line if you have questions. And I hope you enjoyed this intermediate lute lesson. We'll keep trying to think of other pieces that are in that sort of category of much loved and frequently played pieces that people might be able to benefit from a bit of guidance on. So, for now, signing off. Bye, everybody.